Karen's first scream didn't come from the HOA office. It came from her bathroom at 6 a.m., loud enough to wake the entire street. By the time neighbors peeked outside, she was standing in her driveway clutching fistfuls of blonde hair, blaming me for ruining her appearance. Me, the guy who told her 100 times to stay the hell away from my lake. Welcome to the HOA Storytime. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-tier HOA drama. Now, before you think I'm being dramatic, let me set the scene. My lake isn't some picture-perfect paradise. It's a leftover pit of chemical sludge from an old factory site, surrounded by a fence with huge yellow signs warning, hazardous water, no swimming. Even the ducks won't land there. But did that stop Karen? Not even close. In her mind, rules don't apply, and her HOA badge is a golden ticket to anywhere. She started calling it the Community Wellness Lagoon. She'd waddle over wearing an oversized straw hat, cheap sunglasses, and clutching a pink flamingo float. Sometimes she'd bring boxed wine, other times her loud Bluetooth speaker blasting meditation music. She'd wave at me from the water like she was in some fantasy commercial, yelling, "You don't own nature, Bob." Karen insists on calling me Bob, even though that's not my name. The first time I confronted her, she claimed the HOA bylaws gave her unlimited access to community resources. I told her the only thing unlimited was her ignorance. She gripped her float like it was a life preserver and said, "You'll thank me when this lake boosts property values." Right? Because nothing says luxury quite like a radioactive algae and toxic fumes. I filed complaints, contacted City Hall, even showed her the inspection reports proving the lake was dangerous. She laughed it off and said, "That's just the government trying to scare people." Meanwhile, she kept treating my hazardous lake like her private spa, even bringing other HOA board members for wellness soaks. And so while I stood there shaking my head from the shore, I knew it was only a matter of time before nature, well, toxic sludge, taught her a lesson. And man, when it did, Karen was not prepared. Before we continue, please comment what country or city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this reaches. Karen didn't just keep sneaking into my hazardous lake. She basically put it on her schedule. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays became lake therapy sessions. She'd stomp down the street in her ridiculous spa robe, dragging that flamingo float like some celebrity heading to rehab, announcing to anyone who'd listen, self-care is community care. The HOA followers ate it up. By the second week, I had a parade of nosy neighbors wandering into my yard, hauling beach towels and coolers like my toxic pit was some kind of resort. They set up lawn chairs, lathered themselves with sunscreen, and acted like I was their personal lifeguard. Karen even pulled out a whistle, yeah, an actual whistle, and started calling herself the lake director. I stood there with my arms crossed, asking if they'd all lost their minds. "You're gonna regret this," I warned them. Karen smirked, dipped her toes in the greenish sludge, and said, "The only regret here is your lack of community spirit, Bob." Again with the Bob. At first, everyone pretended it was amazing. Karen claimed the tingling sensation on her skin proved it was deep cleansing. When another neighbor started coughing nonstop, Karen called it detoxing. One guy's arm broke out in blotchy red rashes, and she actually suggested he drink more lake water to balance it out. I almost choked when she said that. I filed even more complaints, but the city moved slower than frozen molasses, and every single day, my yard looked like some deranged beach party from hell. I once caught Karen floating with a bottle of box Chardonnay shouting, "This is natural medicine," while the flamingo slowly deflated underneath her. Then the warning signs started piling up. Karen's wispy blonde curls looked thinner every week. She tried hiding it with bigger hats, but each time she climbed out of the lake, her hair seemed more attached to the water than her scalp. Of course, she brushed it off, literally, laughing that seasonal shedding was totally normal. But the neighbors started talking. They noticed the coughs, the rashes, the weird chemical smell clinging to their skin, and they definitely noticed Karen's hair floating down the storm drains. The toxic lake was winning, and Karen was about to lose big time. By the third week, Karen's hairline looked like it was trying to escape. At first, it was just getting thinner. Then it turned into bald spots the size of quarters. She tried fixing it with a home perm kit, but the result was less glamorous and more fried haystack. Every time she brushed, more clumps fell out. By then, my morning entertainment was listening to her scream at her bathroom mirror loud enough to wake the whole neighborhood. But did Karen admit to her lake obsession? Not a chance. She marched straight to my front porch one Saturday, gripping a handful of hair like it was crime scene evidence, and accused me of poisoning the water. According to her twisted logic, I dumped hair removal chemicals into the lake just to sabotage her. Meanwhile, she looked like a molting parrot going through a divorce. "Bob," she shrieked again, "not my name. You've destroyed my hair, my reputation, my image." She gestured wildly, her cheap wig sliding halfway off her head. I couldn't help myself. I laughed. That's when her HOA posse showed up, half of them scratching their own rashes and coughing like chain smokers. Karen pointed at me with shaky authority, declaring, "This man has committed chemical warfare against the HOA." The crowd gasped like we were in a bad daytime soap opera. I held up the stack of state-issued hazard reports I'd been waving at them for weeks. "The lake was already toxic," I reminded them. "You were trespassing. I warned you." Of course, logic never worked with Karen. She doubled down, calling me a domestic eco-terrorist. She even staged a mock trial at the HOA clubhouse, where she paraded around in a crooked wig, trying to convince everyone that my backyard was basically Chernobyl because of me. But word spread fast. Neighbors noticed Karen's bald patches peeking out from under her sun hats. Kids nicknamed her Patchy the Lake Witch. Every meeting ended with giggles when her wig slipped. And as her embarrassment grew, so did her desperation to blame me for everything. The funny thing? I didn't have to do anything. Karen was going down. Hair first. The HOA trial was the stupidest circus I'd ever witnessed. Karen shredded into the clubhouse wearing her crooked dollar store wig, acting like Judge Judy in flip-flops. She'd printed flyers labeling me the lake villain and handed them out like campaign materials. Half the board sat there scratching their arms raw, while the other half tried not to laugh at the fact her wig was on backwards. That's when my secret weapon walked in. The state environmental inspector, clipboard, lab coat, and a stack of reports thick enough to shut down a power plant. He looked around the room, took one whiff of Karen's detoxed lake stench still radiating off her, and sighed like he'd seen this disaster too many times before. He laid it out plain and simple. The lake had been marked hazardous decades ago after industrial dumping. I hadn't poisoned anything. Karen had been soaking herself in government-documented toxic sludge the entire time. And every single one of them had ignored multiple legal warning signs to jump right in. Trespassing, endangerment, willful stupidity, all documented. The room went dead quiet until someone snorted at Karen's wig sliding sideways again. That broke the floodgates. Laughter erupted. People whipped out their phones, snapping pictures of her half-bald head. The inspector even coughed to cover up a laugh. Karen's face turned redder than a fire truck, but the humiliation was already spreading like wildfire. Within hours, her meltdown was all over the neighborhood group chat. Memes were created. Lake Witch Karen with photoshopped seaweed hair became an instant classic. Her attempt to sue me crashed and burned spectacularly. Instead, the city hit her with fines for trespassing, ignoring safety warnings, and leading others into dangerous conditions. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves, throwing Karen under the bus for misleading everyone. Classic rats abandoning a sinking ship. Now, every HOA meeting features Karen in a stiff, synthetic wig that gleams like plastic under the fluorescent lights. She glares at me like I personally invented toxic waste, but nobody takes her seriously anymore. In fact, whenever she tries bringing up community health, someone coughs dramatically or whispers, "Careful, don't lose another chunk," and the room erupts in laughter. The lake is still off limits, but the legend of Karen's toxic spa days will live on forever. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Comment below.